In the first Techopoly video, we talked about the system of online free speech arenas being enclosed in monopolized private space, and how breaking the monopoly on that space is likely the best answer going forward. However, in the interest of not having a 45-minute long video, I trimmed off a few things that are still very much a part of this continuing online dialogue about free speech, corporations, and monopolies. Before we go any further, I'd like to address the idea of the Internet Bill of Rights. I said previously that the concept is at least partially well-intentioned. After all, I don't think Dave Cullen or Styx are advocating for it from a position of bad faith. However, there are a few reasons that I'm not really behind it. The first reason I hinted at before. The Internet Bill of Rights is about controlling monopoly behavior through new rules, which is a symptom of the bigger problem of unchecked and unregulated monopoly existence. The Internet Bill of Rights does nothing about the problem, which is the fact that we have monopolies in the first place. As the Internet Bill of Rights, or IBR, is a new set of rules, it begs the question of who writes them, who they apply to, and just who enforces them. If you think the government, which is not currently enforcing antitrust laws like they should, is suddenly going to magically enforce the Internet Bill of Rights, then you are dreaming. We already have solid laws that can fix the problem. We don't need the addition of a new, untested law that needs time and maturity through editing and tweaks to really work well. Another reason the Internet Bill of Rights is a flawed concept is because it expects that the monopoly will just roll over and acquiesce to a new set of rules. Current monopolies have power and agendas, and neither of those are going away simply because someone wrote a new rule. It would be in the nature of a progressive monopoly to skirt or find a way around the IBR, and I think it would be abnormal for them not to do this. I fully expect YouTube and Twitter to find ways around the IBR roadblocks to keep shadow banning, skewing algorithms, and generally harassing people that they don't like. And it doesn't feel like I'm going out on a limb to say that. Third, one of the largest issues with the Internet Bill of Rights is that no one knows what it is, but everyone has an opinion about what it should be. The whole concept is a blank slate for how I think it should be on the internet. For example, Dave Cullen and Styx both want the Internet Bill of Rights to prevent suppression of free speech. They are both fairly right-leaning and anti-socialist. However, some of the other ideas I've read online see the Internet Bill of Rights as including universal free internet and Wi-Fi as a right, which is a pretty socialist idea, the reinstatement of net neutrality, which Dave P. and I have already discussed on a live stream, and so on. Many of these positions on the IBR are directly opposed to each other. The idea of the Internet Bill of Rights is so broad and means so much to so many voters that in many ways, it's already useless. These are the issues that I see with the IBR. I think it chases symptoms with overly complex solutions that very few people will be able to agree on. Now for the biggies, how to deal with Facebook and Twitter. As I said before, for Google, YouTube, Gmail, AdWords, and so on, it's in the best interest of consumers to break up the Googleopoly. But for Facebook and Twitter, it is not. There's a better way. Let me explain with two illustrations, one about parties and the other about utilities. First, imagine that in your area you have 5 good friends, and each one throws a party on a particular Friday night. You want to see all of them and all of the people that will be at each party. But doing that means that you will spend a significant amount of time going from party to party just to connect with everyone, even if they all live relatively near each other or even in the same subdivision. Obviously, the quick answer to this problem is throw one party, not 5 parties. This is the mirror image as to why splitting up Twitter and Facebook isn't a solution. Creating 5 new Facebooks means 5 new places to go to connect with everyone that you previously connected to on one platform. And odds are everyone might just slowly migrate back to one platform anyway. It's like that old joke you'll see on a sign at a bar. We're all here because we're not all there. Everyone is on Facebook because no one is anywhere else. You might say, so we're stuck with one platform? It would appear so unless an SMTP2 arises, as I've nicknamed it, a social media transfer protocol that allows one app to synchronize, post, repost, and connect across all platforms, like a reverse Hootsuite with one feed aggregating each of your social media accounts. But in the meantime, sometimes the answer 1 is the best answer. For example, how many water lines are running into your house right now? How many electric lines are running in? How many sewer lines are running out? Odds are the answer is 1 of each. That's how it is for many utilities, and that's how they run best. Previously, I said that I rejected the idea that Twitter and Facebook should be made into public utilities, that is, publicly owned, publicly run, and so on, and I hold to that. I do loathe Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg, but I don't want the seizure of private property in the name of the public good. I have my reasons. But what they share in common with utilities by nature is a state of being called a natural monopoly. A natural monopoly is when one company arises as the sole provider of a service because it's not really feasible to have more than one. If we split up Twitter and Facebook, no one would want to manage 5 different Facebook accounts in addition to the 3 Twitters, and neither does anyone want to run 4 water lines to every house in the city. So here's the truth. Facebook and Twitter are natural monopolies. The answer is not to confiscate them for state ownership, and neither is it to break them up. The answer is to treat them like we treat all other natural monopolies. And yes, they can remain privately owned and profitable just like a private utility. Now you might be thinking, this doesn't feel like an improvement, but natural monopolies have a catch. They're regulated. They have a very specific set of rules they have to play by if they want to keep playing the game. And one of those rules is that they are not allowed to discriminate. Let's say Richard Spencer lives in an area with only one electric service, and that electric service gets wind that he's one of their customers, and they just so happen to hate his white guts. Because they are a recognized natural monopoly, they cannot legally just cut him off because they hate him or they don't like the alt-right. They are not allowed to discriminate. His lights have to stay on. The goal of regulating natural monopolies is not for the Fed to pick winners and losers. It's to keep the monopolies like Facebook and Twitter from picking winners and losers. Recently, there's been talk of Facebook meeting with other big tech firms to police news on their platform before the upcoming election. You are certainly drinking your bathwater if you think Twitter or Facebook is going to be fair and impartial with no political bias regarding that news policing. So, natural monopolies can only exist as monopolies, so it's important that they aren't allowed to just abuse people at will. They have to be fair if they want to keep their doors open. The recognition of Facebook and Twitter as privately owned natural monopolies means that they will be left alone if they adhere to a certain set of standards. They can stay private, stay functional, and stay profitable if they play by the rules, and those rules include anti-discrimination law. Today, the power company can't cut you off for being Black, Latino, or Democrat, and if applied to Twitter and Facebook, they couldn't ban you for being conservative or maybe even offensive. Now, I will admit that I don't necessarily like having the Fed come along and enforce rules, but I also have to admit that Facebook and Twitter have been particularly abusive of their denizens based on progressive social justice morality. Twitter and Facebook became monopolies, and then they turned abusive. For example, if Twitter had stuck with the "we're the free speech wing of the free speech party" motto, this conversation would be pointless regarding their status as a natural monopoly. If they had stuck with that motto and someone came along and brought up the point that they are a monopoly, we'd all shrug and say, well, I guess they're a monopoly, but they never go after anyone except accounts actually breaking the law, so why does it matter? In other words, the misbehavior of these natural monopolies is something that necessitates their regulation to prevent abuse in the absence of a free market alternative. They can control that abusive behavior, but they have opted not to. Instead, they've opted to embrace it. If there cannot be a truly free market, then neither can there be an abusive one. This brings us to the platform versus publisher angle, which has been the guise under which such abuse has taken place. This comes from Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. The Electronic Frontier Foundation puts it this way, quote, Section 230 says that no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. In other words, online intermediaries that host or republish speech are protected against a range of laws that might otherwise be used to hold them legally responsible for what others say and do, unquote. So let me sum that up. Facebook and Twitter are those intermediaries. They are just platforms for your words. They are not liable for them. You are. This means they've got no reason to act like a publisher. A publisher is liable for the words that they publish. The New York Times is on the hook for what its writers say concerning libel or slander, and the same goes for many other outlets. Facebook and Twitter are not on the hook for libel or slander. The trouble is that Facebook and Twitter are starting to remove their users, remove content, censor what they see as fake news, and they are doing so because of their progressive morality. But content and user control isn't something a platform does, it's something a publisher does. Facebook and Twitter are trying to have it both ways. They don't want the liability of a publisher, but they do want the control. And at least on one occasion, both of them used the excuse that they are a publisher. The truth is that not only are they not publishers, but they can't actually become publishers, because that would mean that every published piece, that means every status update, becomes subject to approval and editing. It would make Facebook or Twitter an online digital book, magazine, or human encyclopedia, and their entire staff would need to approve every post and every bit of content. They don't want that, and neither do you. Imagine sending a tweet and waiting for approval, or posting a selfie with an old friend on Facebook and waiting an hour for the "congrats, your photo was approved and published" notification. Talk about slowing down the social network to dial-up speeds. So the "we're a publisher" line that they have flirted with is not only a lie, and a convenient one to cover up abuse, but it's also wishful thinking. They can't live by that standard every day, or with every account. It's nothing more than a sham for justification of content removal, and they are quite aware of this. They are not a publisher, and they can't be sued as one, but they want to play one on the internet. They want to be the gender-fluid social network, platform today, publisher tomorrow, and make up the rules as they go. The government would be within its existing rights to make Facebook or Twitter pick a side and then stick with it, just like making an organization declare whether or not they are a nonprofit, and so on. More or less, Facebook and Twitter are functionally stuck with being platforms, and it's what they'd have to pick if the Fed forced the issue. However, there's a much better starting point, and that is with the Fed acknowledging Twitter and Facebook as natural monopolies and then treating them as such. In the end, the answer to a new problem is not a new law, but rather an old one that works well. It's matured, tried, and tested. A new law might be inefficient. No one might agree on what it is or should be, and just because something could get passed doesn't mean it actually solves any of the problems that we are all keenly aware of. If the woeful unawareness of current politicians concerning Twitter, Facebook, and the nature of the interwebs as a whole is indicative of anything, it's that these fossils in power have no idea how to write new legislation to solve a problem that they don't understand on a social platform that an intern uses for them. While these dinosaurs are tripping over their own feet to fecklessly virtue signal about Trump or Supreme Court nominees, there are unelected billion-dollar monopolies playing far too large a role in the political scene. They are influencing dialogue and elections to favor their moral and political interests, not just their business interests. Many politicians don't understand what's going on, and frighteningly enough, at this point, many of them can't. They're not going to author legislation that is any more with the times than they are. The solution is antitrust legislation that has been on the books for a long time. For Google, the answer is that the Googleopoly must be broken up. For Twitter and Facebook, the answer is that they must be regulated as natural monopolies, and that means no more discrimination. If they want to discriminate or play moral nannies on their network, then they need to find a way to not be a monopoly anymore. And that's not likely. The existing set of natural monopoly regulations will do the trick for these two platforms quite nicely, I think. After all, odds are you're going to get water, electricity, or something else from a monopoly today, and they're not going to cut you off because you think the wrong things or watch the wrong videos on the internet. These natural monopolies probably haven't had a hugely negative impact on your life. In fact, maybe you didn't even know they were monopolies before today, but natural monopolies they are, and they function well and make a profit as the non-discriminating only game in town. It's reasonable to expect that if Facebook and Twitter want to keep the same status as a monopoly, and that such a status does indeed apply, then they too must play by the same rules. The big challenge now is getting voters to understand and the politicians to listen.